I'm Craig Markham, Chairman of the Judicial Committee of the Erie County Bar Association. With me today is fellow committee member, Attorney Tim Riley. This interview is part of the Bar Association's initiative to provide information to its membership and to members of the general public regarding candidates who are running for judge in the Court of Common Pleas of Erie County. The Bar Association will post on its website the candidate's resume and his answers to an in-depth background questionnaire. The Bar Association will also conduct a poll of its members, asking that they use their experience and knowledge in order to rate the candidate. With us today is Judge Marshall Piccinini, who is a candidate for the open seat on the Court of Common Pleas.
Your Honor, can you tell us a little bit about your educational background and your professional employment history?
Yes, Tim, I actually started my legal career in the United States Army. The Army had given me a scholarship during college, and in the middle of my years in college, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and the Army allowed me to do that. And so I went to the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, and when I got through law school, I was sent off to the Army Law School for several months and was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas with the 1st Infantry Division, where I began my legal career, and as a young lawyer, it was a great experience. I started out as a legal assistance attorney, representing individual clients each day. Did that for about a year and handled landlord-tenant consumer disputes, some wills and estate planning, some family law and things of that nature. In the middle of all that, the first Gulf War started, really about 90 days after I arrived at the 1st Infantry Division. And so then my job, really, the focus became preparing soldiers for their overseas deployment, which was a privilege to be part of at that time in our nation's history. When the deployment ended, I was changed to become a United States Army trial counsel, and I worked in the courtroom, and that's where I fell in love with work in the courtroom. I prosecuted, on some days, military soldiers. I'd wear the Army uniform, and on other days I'd wear a suit and tie, and I was a special assistant United States attorney prosecuting civilians who committed crimes in federal courts in Kansas. When we got done with our service in the Army, Carrie, my wife, and I, of 31 years, wanted to come back to Pennsylvania. She's from Pittsburgh. I was from outside of Philadelphia, and I knew I wanted to be in the courtroom. And at the time, eventual Judge Cunningham, who was the district attorney at the time, had a vacancy for an assistant DA. I'd been prosecuting cases for about 3 years at that time. And Rusty hired me the day after I first stepped foot in Erie, and that was in November of 1993. And we committed as a family, wherever we went next, that was the place we were going to make home. And so we dedicated really our family life to Erie County, raised 3 adult kids who have now been beyond college and living their own lives, and spent about 5.5 years in the DA's office. Another great time as a young lawyer, prosecuting everything from the most basic traffic offenses to death penalty cases. And I learned very keenly the stress of trial work, and did that again for 5.5 years. And during that time became the chief of the Child Abuse and Domestic Violence Prosecution Unit. Again, a very rewarding time in my life, had young kids at the time, and just learned really deeply the impact of domestic violence and child abuse in kids' lives. An opportunity then came up in the United States Attorney's Office and across the street, still in Erie. And I eventually, within a year, became the chief of the United States Attorney's Office, handling federal prosecutions in the 7 counties of northwestern Pennsylvania, Erie being one of them. And again, that was another privilege to serve the community then for those 7 counties, and spent 20 years as the chief of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Again, prosecuting a little bit of everything, but I really focused my efforts on major drug trafficking organizations, white-collar crime. Folks like to hear that I was the prosecutor on Erie's Pizza Bomber or their Collar Bomb case, which was one of those cases that I handled over the years. And there in federal court, I really honed my skills in the courtroom and learned much more about written advocacy and working as an attorney in more complex cases. Again, a very valuable experience leading to my eventual appointment by the governor and the unanimous confirmation of the Senate to become an Erie County judge. So I've actually circled in my career now back to Erie County, where I started here.
Can you tell us a little bit about the circumstances and the process of your appointment to the Erie County Common Pleas bench?
The process actually started sometime earlier than that. Unfortunately, Judge Bob Sambrook had passed away, and the governor at that time, when I was still in the U.S. Attorney's Office, had announced the intention to fill Judge Sambrook's vacancy, and there was an application process. And talked with my wife about that, and we decided that we would apply. My first call was actually to Barb Sambrook to make sure that Barb understood that that was something that I was doing, and I wanted her to know. After I filled out an application, I was then vetted by the governor's merit selection panel. Attorneys from across and leaders from across the community had conducted interviews of me to see if I was suitable for the position. In the end, by the end of that year, in 2018, I believe it was, the governor decided not to fill any of the vacancies in the benches across the state. And as far as I was concerned, that opportunity had expired, and I was happy in the job where I was. In the spring of 2019, I received a call from a local senator simply asking if I was still interested in a position on the Court of Common Pleas. I said yes after talking with my wife, and did not know what they were referring to at the time. That was on, I think, a Monday. On Tuesday, I was called by the governor's office. They explained that they wanted their panel to interview me, and they wanted the interview to be the next day. The next day, I interviewed, and there were 3 of the people on this panel interview who were the same, had interviewed me previously, so they had a second opportunity to talk with me. Answered their questions. My last question for them is, what are you interviewing me about? And that's when they indicated that this was for Judge Cunningham's more recent vacancy, which would not be up for election in 2019 because he left the bench, in 2021, because he had left the bench at the end of the year. So I knew what they had been interviewing me for, and they indicated that the process was likely going to happen quickly. By Thursday of that week, I received a call that I had been nominated by the governor, and thought that was somewhat of a secret. And the next day, it was in the news media that I had been nominated. I then spent the next several months being questioned and vetted by the Pennsylvania Senate Judiciary Committee. Went to Harrisburg and was interviewed by every one of the members of that committee who were interested in talking with me, and then returned for a Senate confirmation hearing. Testified in the morning. I was immediately, after my presentation, unanimously moved forward in my nomination by that committee. And by the end of the day, the unanimous vote of the Senate came back confirming me as a judge. I then needed some time to leave my work at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and on June 28th, I was sworn in as a Court of Common Pleas judge. That's the history as I recall it.
You spent the first 20 years of your practice as a prosecutor, primarily as a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then were appointed to the Common Pleas bench, where you've been in the Family Division and doing civil law. Tell us about the challenge that it posed to you to make a switch like that in the middle of your career.
Well, in the beginning, the initial challenge I think that I saw was that difference between serving as a lawyer for a career, 30 years, being an advocate, and now it being very clear that I was no longer an advocate. I was that neutral person listening to the advocacy from both sides and having to be the neutral person. I committed in that month between leaving the U.S. Attorney's Office and taking the bench that this is what I wanted, and that I wanted to be that fair and neutral person. With that in mind, once I got to the bench, being in the courtroom was where I felt most comfortable. I'd been there for 30 years. And because I had practiced for all those years, I knew what would be coming at me in the courtroom, and I know how to rule on evidence. I know how to resolve people's disputes in the courtroom. And it became very clear to me that my courtroom experience was critical as a judge. And so that transition to judge, in that regard, became somewhat natural. With regard to the rest of the areas, it was known throughout the community that my primary area of practice was criminal. And I did not want to do criminal work when I first came on the bench. I was assigned to the Family Division. I'd gone to Judges Meade and Drusilla and Walsh, and I asked them to assign me to any area of the law. because I wanted to prove to myself, personally and professionally, that I could be a judge outside of the criminal area, and I wanted to prove to the legal community and to the community in general that I was capable of this job. And again, satisfying myself of that before I'd have to run for office. So in the beginning, it was a lot of work to come full circle and to engage in family practice that I really hadn't even touched since my early days as an Army lawyer. That required a lot of work in the beginning, a lot of hard work getting up to speed. And I've committed myself on the bench to being a judge who will always be prepared. And that's helped me in very quickly getting up to speed in those areas. I moved from just being in the family division to doing dependency work, child neglect cases with the Office of Children and Youth and Counsel, and then took on juvenile delinquency cases and have expanded my civil litigation practice. It's been a great experience. And frankly, Tim, areas of the law that as a lawyer, I did not have the level of respect that I do today. And greatly enjoy my work helping people, not in criminal cases, but in civil cases and family cases, resolve what are very complex problems. And I think my experience for 30 years has helped me know how to do that. And it's just my experience, I think, as a father of 3 kids, as a lawyer, and just from a maturity standpoint, that I've hopefully brought all of that experience to bear and have gotten up to speed in those areas. I enjoy it very much.
You were appointed to the Common Pleas bench in June of 2019 and now have almost 2 years of experience on the bench. What changes or improvements do you think are necessary to improve our local Common Pleas court?
Tim, I think the primary question that's been asked of me since I've been on the bench, because a good bit of that has been during COVID. So we have discovered during the pandemic all of the challenges with regard to alternative technology and means with which we could use other things other than physically showing up into a courtroom to practice law and to help people who need access to the courts. So what I think we're going to likely be doing some after-action briefings when we get out of this mode, but I think that we can do collectively better from a technology standpoint. I think, and I just recently saw that this is a challenge across the state, and in fact, it requires courts of common pleas across the state to be on the same page with regard to a comprehensive, unified electronic case filing system. It was unfortunate that folks in the middle of a pandemic need to physically come into the courthouse to turn things in. And I've seen other practical concerns as a judge without an electronic case filing system, having to wait some time when things that would have otherwise been emergencies, I may not know about them through the mail system for a week. In an electronic system, all of the parties are immediately informed about what's going on, and the documents that are attached can be easily accessible. Having been in the federal courthouse when that transition took place, we all were not pleased with the idea, but it probably took about 48 hours to realize that we wish we had been doing that all along. And then I think in the courtroom, I think we've proven to ourselves that alternative video technology in the appropriate cases can save folks, save attorneys from driving sometimes 5 hours, 2.5 to Pittsburgh and back, to have a hearing that could have been done through some alternative electronic means. And we've seen that successfully on the criminal side. I just completed a trial with an expert witness who was out of town, who was able to very, very appropriately testify, and it was an effective means for examination, cross-examination, and my assessment of credibility. So I think, much like the rest of society is realizing those things are now manageable, I think the court system could use that. Beyond that, I've inherited practice with a whole team of judges that have been on the bench, most of them for a very long time, very skilled at what they're doing, and I've learned a lot from them.
Do you think the manner in which potential jurors are identified and summoned for service as jurors in Erie County Court trials is adequate to ensure that we have the diversity of Erie County represented on our jury panels?
One of the things, Tim, that I've realized as a judge is there are an entire series of ethics rules that preclude judges from answering any questions that might be coming before them as a matter of litigation. This happens to be one of those questions where I would be concerned answering the question, because a trial judge, since I am in the trial division as well as the family division doing civil and criminal jury trials, challenges to the veneer, the selection process by which jurors are summoned, would come before me, and I would feel uncomfortable answering the questions. I think it would violate my ethical responsibilities because that particular topic may be in front of me. With that said, it's my understanding that Erie County has a relative expansive means of identifying potential jurors beyond voter registration and driver's licensing, but also through the Department of Human Services records, Social Security records, and other means that attempts to achieve what we've all known in the legal community has been a challenge, and that's why judges like me have to deal with those challenges, because folks are concerned about it.
If you could choose the division of our court on which you serve, or the type of cases that you would most like to hear, what division would you select, and what types of cases would you prefer?
I think if I could choose, I would be in the every division, in which I could do some of all of the various areas of law. I've enjoyed that greatly. Frankly, I think folks anticipated I'd want to be a criminal trial judge, and that's not the case. I will serve in whatever division whoever the president judge is at the time. I think my skill set now allows me to serve in whatever division it might be. I have greatly enjoyed practice in the family division. The feedback I get has been very positive in my ability, for some reason, to help families resolve their conflict, and have enjoyed that. The juvenile cases, I am so hopeful every day that something that I say might make a difference in a young kid's life. That's still a work in progress for me. I haven't been there long enough to get feedback to know whether that's something where I'm sufficiently skilled to continue doing that. I enjoy family, and I love being in the courtroom, so any particular area would suit me fine.
Is there one judge or justice you would most like to emulate during your years on the bench? And if so, tell us who that is and why.
Tim, this is one of the questions that I don't answer directly as to a name. And this is really something that's more about me as a person. First of all, I'm not a judge tracker. I don't read case law in my leisure. I focus on case law for purposes of the litigation that's in front of me. And I try and reserve my judgments on any individual folks unless I know them. And what I am satisfied with, without naming a particular judge or justice that I would not feel comfortable with, because they're folks I don't know, are the attributes that I've seen in judges throughout my practice in the Army, here in Erie County, and in the federal court system. And primarily, the judges that I had the most respect for were the judges who were prepared. Those judges who were prepared seemed most able to properly resolve cases. Even if they ruled against me, I was satisfied that they were prepared. Judges who were able to actually explain what they did and why they did it. There have been courtrooms where I've left not understanding why that a judge made a ruling and getting no guidance as to their analysis. I've committed not to be that kind of judge. And then judges who are listeners. In the years of advocacy, you were an advocate and that was your job, and you were the talker. As a judge, you're not that. And judges who are good listeners, hearing from both sides has been critical to me. What I've really come to terms with, more so than when I practice as a lawyer, is that there are two sides to every story. And although one side may seem compelling, that's until you start hearing the cross-examination. So judges who listen are ones who have earned my respect. And then really the final attribute that I had some great examples of this throughout my career are judges who approach the bench with humility. This is a job that comes with significant responsibility, and there is power associated with it. I am here today merely because of a set of circumstances that resulted in an appointment. I'm still the same person I was before I got the honor. This is only another opportunity for me to serve, and I commit myself every day to do that honorably and to do it with a sense of justice, a appreciating and loving mercy, and to do it for me personally with humility. And those are the types of judges that I've had the most respect for.
Your Honor, is there anything else you'd like the voting public to know about you that we haven't yet discussed?
Yeah, thank you. I think just finally for me, that my whole career and my life has been in an effort to give back and to serve. And I've found this opportunity to be a judge, and now running for judge to be the next opportunity to provide that service back to the community. I've been very blessed with the position that I've been appointed to and throughout my life, and I find service as an opportunity to give back. I now have experience, although I'm running for judge, I have experience as a judge. I've done an on-the-job interview for now almost 2 years. And through that process and my life experience in my 30 years practicing in courtrooms in this county and elsewhere, I think I'm prepared to continue, and I hope that the voters will agree, and I think I can do this job well. Thank you.